I've been told both ways. One, that he didn't want me to pay me because I was white, and that he didn't want to pay me because I was a bench player. So he didn't want to pay him because he was white, Stephen A., and because he was a bench player. Your reaction?
J.J. Redick's absolutely correct. He's telling the truth. It's something that's been out there for quite some time. It's something that I believe I reported months ago. After Doc Rivers took the job, if you remember, there is a window between when you can talk to the players and reach an agreement during free agency in the early part of July, and then ultimately when the signing period is allowed, you can sign. Doc Rivers had a handshake agreement with J.J. Redick and his representatives. He was on board. And in the aftermath of that, Donald Sterling picked up the phone and called Doc Rivers and told Doc Rivers he didn't want J.J. Redick, purportedly because his ethnicity was one part, because he looked at the league being black, athletic, et cetera, and feel like J.J. Redick didn't fall under that category. And he didn't care what Doc Rivers had agreed to, even though he had just given Doc Rivers the job and gave him authority to make those kind of decisions. Doc Rivers stood firm. His belief not only was J.J. Redick a quality guy, which he is, because J.J. Redick is a great guy, and he's also a sharpshooter. We know what his role was coming out of Duke. This dude could really, he's a gunner. He can put it up.
And can I say real quick,
yes,
he made a big jump shot and 2 big free throws down the stretch.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's
Just
a guy.
for the record.
J.J. Redick, I've always said this from the time he came into the league. You want him on your team.
Right.
You just do. He's just that. He's a talented shooter. He knows his role, and he plays it. And so Doc Rivers, the reason why Donald Sterling backed off, according to my sources, Doc Rivers threatened to quit. He was going to leave.
Over J.J. Redick.
Well, he was going to quit. It wasn't just over J.J. Redick. It's over the principle of giving your word and keeping it, and also making sure that Donald Sterling honored his word and the authority he gave Doc. So Doc was going to walk away and was going to quit unless J.J. Redick, unless his deal with J.J. Redick was honored.
It's powerful.
And that is what happened. But I say all of that to say, without naming any names, there are a plethora of coaches that are a bit reticent about bringing on white players. Not because when you look at how athletic the league is, they look at these guys and they say, what role can they play? But J.J. Redick can shoot. So when you can shoot and you have a high basketball IQ, those things play well. But then the Dirk Nowitzkis of the world come along and they debunk that, and a plethora of other guys, and even when Larry Bird came into the league and all of that. So remember the whole Rodman, Isaiah Thomas controversy, whatever, because you had certain players that had those questions because of how guys were ballyhooed. But today's coaches are far more sophisticated than that. Here's the thing. It's not about your ability to run and jump or whatever the case may be. The reason why they tend, and they're never going to acknowledge this, but the reason why they tend to lean towards a lot of African-American players is not just because of their ability, but because of their hunger.
Sure.
When you come from different segments of our society and you're relatively well off, it's one thing. Nobody's going to everybody that goes into the league for the most part works hard, and they put forth a valiant effort. But it's just like a boxer getting into the ring. It's one thing when you're reliant strictly upon your skill. It's another thing entirely when your family and your well-being and your quality of life is at stake.
Yeah.
When you don't have that concern, the level of fire inside of your belly to succeed is deemed as being somewhat short compared to those who are starving for the success. So it's not just simply about ethnicity. We point to that because from a socioeconomic perspective, obviously you have a lot of black folks in America that struggle considerably more than most white folks in America. But at the same time, it's not that they're choosing black over white or anything like that. They're looking at a guy that isn't necessarily starving like that compared to somebody who is. And that's usually the kind of player they want on their roster. And that's where it comes from, more so than ethnicity. But there have been some coaches that look at it and they say, that's why I would prefer the black player.
To your point, and in fairness to Donald Sterling, let's remember, he had just sunk 5 years and $52 million into a Chris Kaman who had not come close to living up to said contract. So he had been scorched by that one, and he's saying, wait a second, and JJ was quoted in USA Today as saying, it may have been because I'm white, or it may have been because I was a bench player. Remember, he was not a starter in his, what, 7 years in Orlando? Not a starter. So Doc is saying, yes, let's give, what was it, $27 million for 4 years to a J.J. Redick, who's not been a starter in the league, because, by golly, I'm going to start him. Because we need that. We need that offside shooter. That sort of Steve Kerr kind of, not that Steve Kerr was a starter for the Bulls, but that's what Doc knew that team needed, was some sharpshooter to take a little pressure off Blake and DeAndre inside.
Right.
Okay, so Doc knew what he was doing, and Doc was dead on right, because, hey, JJ has been really good. He had his back issue for a while.
I don't believe you win this series against the Warriors without J.J. Redick.
Okay.